The views expressed are solely those of the speaker and not necessarily those of Paltalk.com, AVM Software, or its advertisers.
News Talk is online. News Talk Online is a production of Paltalk.com, the largest multimedia interactive program on the internet with more than 4 million unique users on demand on iTunes and on YouTube, and on my blog, GaryBaumgarten.com, where you are encouraged to post your comments, whether you agree with yours truly or not, no retribution, and where you should be subscribing to my Twitter feed, twitter.com/GaryBaumgarten, so you can read about a lot of things going on in the news from a perspective you may or may not get covered by the mainstream media. And thanks to our good friends at CRN Digital Talk Radio. We're syndicated to an additional 12 million households. I am your host, Gary Baumgarten. I welcome you to the show. Those of you here in the United States, happy Labor Day. Is it some holiday in Canada as well? Does anybody know? Well, if it is, happy whatever day it may be in Canada. Labor Day in Canada as well. Well, happy Labor Day with an O-U-R, our Canadian friends. Boaz, I think you would agree with me that the Republican Party did a god-awful job vetting out Sarah Palin as John McCain's running mate.
Oh, boy. I mean, you want to go back to that one. Boy, they did a bad job on that one.
Yes, they did. And I'm sure you would agree with me that the White House, the current White House, did a horrible job vetting out this Van Jones to be his green czar, given the fact that he hates Republicans. He hates, he believes that 9/11 was caused by the U.S. government, a bunch of other crazy stuff. He's leading a campaign to take advertisers away from Glenn Beck. That was a bad vetting job by the White House. You would agree?
Oh, absolutely. I'm not about to make comparisons as to who did a worse job, the Democrats or the Republicans, with their respected administration. But if I were to have to choose, I would say that Obama made a worse choice here. You know, putting somebody in the White House that has government conspiracy theories about 9/11 is. I don't know, Gary, where we're going with this, but it just doesn't look right.
Well, I'll tell you where we're going with this. I can show you an organization that's done an even worse job of vetting. It's the United Nations. You know, UNESCO, which is one of the multi-initialed agencies at the United Nations, all starting with a UN. And I can tell you that it stands for UN something or other. It's their cultural arm, is contemplating and has invited as a candidate Egypt's Minister of Culture. Now, you would think that any member state, especially one as large and as rich in culture as Egypt, any member state such as Egypt with such a wonderful history of culture, you would think that their culture minister automatically would be qualified for the position. But what you may not have known is that this fella, last year, ordered all books in all Egyptian libraries that were written by Israelis burned. You know, it just doesn't cease to amaze me that the United Nations would consider anything as stupid as to choose somebody of this caliber.
But Gary, you know what? It makes a lot of
kind
sense.
Kind of hatred.
It makes a lot of sense, Gary, that the United Nations would bring in would consider a candidate for culture, as you had described from Egypt, because the United Nations has been making these bad decisions in the past all the time. A lot of the different the secretaries of the United Nations of past and other positions have always been anti-Israel. So why should this be any different?
Well, this is my point. The Israelis are very dubious about anything that the United Nations does. They pass resolution after resolution condemning Israel when it protects itself, but does nothing about those who fire rockets into Israel. It's always Israel who's the bad guy. In fact, there have been, for the past week or so, rockets on a steady basis being fired onto Israeli soil with no retaliation by the Israelis, and nobody pays notice, least of all the United Nations, albeit it's a member state of the United Nations that is under attack. And the moment Israel retaliates, suddenly there will be howls of condemnation, guaranteed. So the Israelis already view the United Nations as one-sided against them. And now you have them considering this guy the cultural minister of Egypt, which on its face you'd think that the person would be well qualified for the job to head UNESCO, but who's ordered the burning of all Israeli books in Egyptian libraries. Now, some of our Persian friends are pointing out that 30 years ago, when the cultural revolution, so-called, occurred in Iran, they ordered the burning of books as well. And I know a woman, and you know her as well, Boaz, back from the days when we did bagels and coffee with Boaz and Gary in the morning here on Paltalk, who lived in Tehran, who now lives in New Jersey, married an American fella and has a baby, and they're living in freedom here in New Jersey now. But you will recall that she was arrested 3 times. And once for too much hair showing from under the headscarf, but twice for reading banned books to children. And, you know, when you start limiting discourse, when you start determining for people what they can and cannot read, where they can and cannot surf on the internet, who they can or cannot believe in, what religion they may or may not subscribe to, then we have a problem. And my issue all along with this show is to try to break down some of those barriers and recognize them and highlight them when they occur. Please, UNESCO, do not appoint this fella, no matter how qualified otherwise he may be, to head your agency. Please do not.